Every kid played it and everybody loved it. That was the only thing a kid had to do, was to play baseball. And you played it, if you were a little kid going to school, you played it from early morning to dusk. And you never get tired playing baseball.
Well, I've seen playoff games when you would have to walk a half a mile to get to the game. Parked on both sides of the road.
He's out. Fans were radical. They were diehards. They couldn't accept the loss. There are no excuses. If you made a mistake, boy, they were down your back. Whether you was on, whether they were your fans or what.
Even the ladies come out there in left field in Jamestown on Sunday afternoon, and they sat under what we called the big tree. And that was like a little Sunday afternoon get-together for these ladies, and they were all foreign ladies from Czechoslovakia, from Poland, from Hungary, Austria, Hungary. They just sat, there was a social thing for them.
It's amazing what we did, because the work was hard in the mine, but it seemed when you came out that playing ball was relaxed. And you had to go full effort to play the game, because the other teams were playing, you play to win. We didn't seem to mind it at all. After the game was over, we used to wind up at the gas station, playing the game all over again, get home around 10 o'clock, then he was up at 5:30 in the morning and go to work again. That was a weekly routine.
Cambria County was built on coal, on the generations of Eastern and Southern European migrants who came here at the turn of the century, who worked in the mines and fashioned a community on their own. Their children grew up during the Great Depression and came of age under fire during the Second World War. They knew how tough life could be, but their lives were more than drudgery and pain. There was joy, too. And in the coal mining towns of the region, that exuberance for life could be found on the ball field. There's not much coal mined here anymore. Soon the generation that dug the coal that powered American industry, fought from Coral Sea to Normandy, and came back from the war to play baseball will be gone. This is the story of the Cambria County Industrial League and what baseball meant to the people of the coal fields.
It was a rallying point. It was something to be loyal to, something to take pride in. It raised community spirit.
Coal mining dominated Cambria County, and the prospect of a job in the mines drew thousands of migrants to the region. The coal they dug stoked railroad locomotives, heated homes, and fueled a growing steel industry. Despite the promise of steady work and a good life, it didn't always turn out that way.
1927, I was in the first grade in the Sawman School up the line here where Cooney has his coal company. They wanted to organize a union. And the company brought these coal and iron police on these big horses. And I could see those guys, they just looked like they were 12 feet high on those horses. And they warned the people that they didn't want to go in and be non-union workers, scabs as they called them, that they had to get out of those company houses up there.
In 1933, the Depression was, and that was about the roughest I can remember our family having, because I think my dad was out of work for about a year and a half.
I think they sacrificed for us, and I think they set us a wonderful example, to be honest, to have a good work ethic, give your employer a day's work for a day's pay. That's what they were trying to instill in us, because they didn't have that. You know, they were being used by the company officials and everything.
There was still considerable hostility toward the foreign-born, who with their children made up a majority of the population in many of the nation's urban and industrial centers. That hostility often turned ugly.
The ethnic people were deathly afraid of the Klan. And I know when we were small, if they were coming into town to demonstrate, our parents would herd us in the house and we wouldn't be allowed out of the house because that's the way they felt about it, that they were afraid.
Life wasn't all that much better for the second generation at first. Work was hard, dirty, and dangerous.
We were black. We were dead black. I think I can remember we got 89 cents a ton. That had to be clean coal, no rock involved at all. And that was hand-loaded. The work itself wouldn't have been hard if you could work with a normal stance. For instance, you have to kneel to shovel. And sometimes you could stand and shovel, but not all the time. It all depends.
They were always worried. You know, you never knew what was going to happen in the mines. You know, the safety wasn't as great then it is now. You know, you have fatalities in the mine, but they're few and far between right now.
It was dangerous, no question about it. If somebody was hurt bad, say the day before, then you wasn't too keen on going back in, but you knew you had to because that was your living. But then eventually you even got used to that.
In 1922, 79 men died in an accident at the Spangler Mine. A generation later, disaster struck the Sonman Mine. Every miner knew it could just as easily have been him.
In July of 15th, 1940, we had the big explosion right up the line here at this mine. 63 men lost their lives.
But no matter how tough and how desperate their lives became, there were moments when the drudgery disappeared.
It was entertainment and a good exercise, and everyone just loved to play ball. Like I said, there wasn't much more you could do. You didn't have many cars. You know, you walked where you went.
It was the thing to do. I mean, we would, the kids that were teenagers, we would drool over the handsome guys on the team. My heartthrob was Mike Gagin.
It was a social thing for them. Yeah, they walked miles and miles. You know, we had people here that had no transportation. If Johnstown or Bents Creek was playing Lily, they walked up the railroad track, up the main line, which is a no-no.
Everybody had their favorite players, and there was a lot of cheering going on. It was just a regular entertainment, and I think people got into, you know, they backed their teams more even than the people watching the major league games. It wasn't a business here. It was a way of life. It was something that was important to everybody.
Baseball boomed in the region after World War I, when steel mills in Johnstown, the Pennsylvania Railroad in Altoona, and mining companies in Cambria, Somerset, and Indiana counties formed industrial leagues for their workers. During the 1920s, the foreign-born still encountered discrimination at work and were treated like second-class Americans, even if they had become citizens. For their children, baseball offered a way into the mainstream of American society, and it could be played for next to nothing.
Oh yes, I felt I was American all the way as far as that goes. We managed baseball regardless of what we used. We used anything from bottle tops. We made our own balls. We'd get a wrap cord on around a little ball and then tape it up with friction tape, and we played ball with and bats made out of pick handles, motor poles, and breaky clubs, and anything you could think of.
There was about 6 or 7 kids in the neighborhood, and of course we had a ball team in Carrolltown, and us kids used to go up there, and every time a ball player from this big team, you know, the big team we called it, we'd hit one down over the hill, we'd go pick up that ball and run like hell. Keep it. And of course they would give us, if they broke a bat, they would give us the bat. Of course we'd have to tape it up, you know, and use it.
One of the best things you could find if Penn Central linemen would throw you a roll of tape. You could tape old baseball bats that were really chipped and broken. We'd nail them together and wrap them up with tape. And the same way with baseballs. If nobody could stitch them up for you. You just look for tape and tape them up.
We used to play in a cow pasture there. And you know, we used bases, dried up cow dung. Yeah, we did.
To their parents, baseball was a foreign game, but one that many came to appreciate through their children.
My dad always watched the ball games. He came from Poland, but he was interested in baseball. He used to come up here and always watch the games. He'd sit in the bleachers and watch them.
Everybody was involved. I mean, you'd hear some cheering in Polish, you know.
These old men would get together, and it was really funny, and they wanted to have an old-timers game, but they had no knowledge of baseball coming from Poland, but they were avid fans. They were true to their teams, and I'll tell you, I'm glad that I grew up in that era because it's something that I'll never forget.
Sports has a way of doing that for a community. It pulls people together, and it gives them a common interest and a common bond, and I think that's what's really important about sports.
As the boys of the coalfields looked for bona fide American heroes, they found one on the sandlots of Nantiglow, Pennsylvania. Rip Collins grew up on Industrial League diamonds in the 1920s. He got his nickname Rip when a ball he hit stuck to a nail on a fence, ripping the cover off. When he was 14, Rip played alongside his father on an Industrial League team. One of the first area players to reach the majors, Collins starred for the St. Louis Cardinals as the first baseman for their Gas House Gang, winners of the 1931 and 1934 World Series. Collins tied for the National League home run title with 35 during the 1934 season and came in second with 128 runs batted in.
I can tell you that he was married to a Portage girl, and he'd come to visit his in-laws. And I remember he had his flashy Oldsmobile, and you remember the gear sticks were on the floor and everything like that. And he had a beautiful ball on top of that gear shift, and it had these little stones set in there, and it had on there Rip Collins. And all of us kids wanted to see that thing, Rip Collins, you know. That was something for us. That was a treat.
Charlie Mitro, Billy Hunter, and Bill Tremmel followed in Collins' footsteps, graduating from Nantiglow, Culver, and Lilly to the major leagues. Others played minor league ball or turned down offers because they preferred the industrial leagues. Some figured they could make more money working in the mines than in the lower levels of the minor leagues and still play ball in the industrial leagues. And they wouldn't have to leave family and friends behind. But the man most remembered in Cambria County wasn't a ball player, he was an umpire, Augie Donatelli.
Augie was shot down and he was in a German prison camp till the war was over. And when he came home, then he went to McGowan's school in Florida, started in the D-League, and he really moved up fast. Next thing you know, Augie's in the National League. And the thing about that is he never changed. You could meet Augie when he was in Pittsburgh. He would come home, you know, his home was in Evansburg at that time. He lived up on Belmont Street. And he always had time to talk with you, you know. If I had a problem, I'd go to Augie and he would tell me what he thought would be the proper way to handle the thing, you know.
And if there was a slide in at home, he was on his hands and knees, and his eyes was on the ball and the play. But right there is what counts in umpiring, the heart.
Donatelli was honored as the outstanding Major League umpire of 1972.
This will give you an idea as to what Augie was like. They had the luggage and all the gifts they were going to give Augie out at home plate, and Bob Prince was out there, and he come out and spoke about Augie, and finally he called Augie out and he said, "Here he is, folks, Augie Donatelli from Johnstown." First thing Augie said when he took the microphone was, "Thank you, Bob, but I want to tell you one thing, I'm not from Johnstown. And my hometown is a little town by the name of Bakerton." And boy, you know, that's the kind of guy Augie was, you know.
Despite the mixed reception immigrants faced, their children had no doubt about what to do during the war. Miners dug record amounts of coal, bought war bonds, and enlisted even though they could have avoided the military by staying in the mine jobs considered essential to the war effort. When the war was over, most of the men went back to work in the mines. Before long, they were also back on the ball field as the company and the union formed the Cambria County Industrial League.
I think the best education I ever got was the time I put in the service. I really, outside of my 8th grade teacher, I think that my best teacher was World War II. Although it was the hard way, but I learned to live with other people, and I experienced other people's nationalities and their form of life.
That was the best 13 years of baseball that you saw in this area. I mean, it was really a very competitive baseball league.
Conditions in the mines improved after the war. By sticking together in the United Mine Workers, the miners had won better pay and working conditions. The companies began selling its houses to the miners. And though relations between the companies and the UMW had been rough for decades, baseball offered common ground.
I think in their best interest, it would be if they could provide a little bit of entertainment for the families, and also I think it made the families better workers too. So I think they had a good point going with their way. But the relation between the coal companies and people in those days were really close. We had the president of our local. He actually was a president of our club. It was a Men's Creek baseball club, and we used to go and contact the coal company about support. Each springtime you had to renew your contract more or less, and the union was involved pretty good with this year. They worked pretty good. The union and the companies worked pretty good as far as recreation was concerned.
The coal companies backed most of the league's teams, providing uniforms and equipment, paying league fees, and often building and maintaining ball fields. But the miners helped too, contributing 10 to 45 cents from each pay to cover costs.
Each man donated money. He donated, I remember years back when I was younger, it was 10 cents a pay, and then later on it became 15 cents a pay, and that's how the team was supported. Although the companies, they would build the dugouts and the backstops and stuff, and they'd pay for the men to come up here and drag the field for them and so forth.
You know, if a manager come up and said, well, we have to do this year, we need that, you know, they'd go to the union meeting, and a good baseball fan would stand up and say, hey, I make a motion, we take X money out of each paycheck, and they'd vote on it. Everyone in favor stand up, and the whole union hall stood up. They're all in favor of it because, you know, they enjoyed it. Everybody enjoyed that sport.
If a man would come down for a job, superintendent, if he was doing the hiring, he'd ask him, are you willing to have a donation taken off your pay for athletics in town? That'd be 15 cents, we'll say, at that time. And if the man said no, well then, in the long run, he didn't have no job. He wasn't going to get a job. If he said yes, you had a paper to sign it, and then you had a job, see? That's the way they did it.
Some workers even got hired by the mines because of their skill as a ball player.
They says, I want Jack Wargo to come up to Revlock and bring 2 of his buddies up there with him, Mikey Gallo and Steve Tomechko, Albert Tomechko. He said, we'll have a job for them if they want to play baseball.
They would hire guys in here just to play ball. And we had a lot of guys working here in Revlock. They had nothing to do. They just sat.
Sometime during the summer when the mine would go down to 2 or 3 days a week, I would get 2 pay envelopes, one for my work at the mine and one for playing ball. And the envelope I got for playing ball sometimes had more in it than the one for working, you know.
The Revlock team, known for its talented roster, hired an outstanding player from Newry, Pennsylvania, named Luke Smith.
He was working for General Machine Works in Port Matilda, and the Monroe Coal Company came down and offered him a job if he would play baseball for him.
Luke, who's seen in the background here, was given a job outside the mine in the electric power division.
I knew of times where he would get a whole shift. They'd tell him, you know, he had a good ball game and he wouldn't have to come to work.
The miners worked and played under the watchful eye of the coal companies, and in some cases they lived in company houses and shopped exclusively at the company store. The miners frequently had their store purchases taken directly out of their pay. Often their entire earnings would end up at the company's store. Then a law was passed that required that miners receive at least $1 per pay after purchases at the company store. Things changed after World War II when the mines began selling the company houses to the families that lived in them, usually for between $600 and $800. During the late 1940s and early 1950s, the league flourished. Teams played 3 times a week as well as on holidays.
The competition was rough. You had to beat a man out for a position. It wasn't the idea that they coached you to play ball. If you didn't want to play, they didn't care, because they had all kind of people that wanted to play ball.
You would come down here for Saturday, back in the 40s, for a Saturday or Sunday baseball game, and you couldn't get a seat in the bleachers down here. That town practically closed down. And there was a lot of money bet on the games.
And the crowds at Benchwick, it is hard to believe that many people would walk up there to watch a game.
Well, what else could you do? There was no television back then, and they loved to go to the ball games.
There was a lot of community involvement, and it was the place to visit everybody because everybody was there. I mean, the guys tended to be friends with the other players, and so the wives knew each other and the families knew each other, and it was just a great place to get together.
It seems that Sunday was the biggest crowd. But on Sunday, nobody worked on Sundays in those days. Stores were closed. There was no such thing as stores being open, so that was your pastime. Sunday, you used to get some big crowds. We used to, from third base clear around to first base. Maybe they'd be standing as high as 5, 6 deep. I know in Bents Creek, we'd pass a hat around, and if you gave a quarter, you got a little tag. You could put on your sleeve or your cap that you was a booster.
You went to church on Sunday, and if you had a ball game that you were traveling out of town, you had to make the 8 o'clock mass, because 10:30 mass wouldn't do you any good, because you didn't have enough time to come home and change into uniform and get on a truck. Like Bents Creek, we went in automobiles, but Johnstown, PNA, they hired a truck, and they went on a truck to these games.
Although these weekend and twilight games were anticipated all week long, the highlights of the season came when a barnstorming team like the Homestead Grays or the House of David arrived to play a team from the minefields.
They'd get in boats and they'd go out in the infield part of the baseball diamond, and they'd let on, that they were rowing the boats. They were good. They made the people laugh, I'll tell you that.
We were just thrilled to see a team come up from way down around Pittsburgh, coming to the little town of Portage to play a team from Altoona, We were just so excited to see these baseball players.
During the 1950s, the coal mining industry began to decline in Cambria County. Television and the automobile began to change sport. Sandlot baseball was a casualty.
When the league broke up, it was sad. It was sad, but we could see it coming. The coal mines were closing down, and people were going to Cleveland. Most of the coal mines went to Cleveland for jobs. And they said if you told them you was a Pennsylvania coal miner, you got a job right away, because they knew they'd get some work out of you.
The 50s were devastating, and it was hard to raise money too then, because the Korean War was over already. It was in 51. After that war was over, boy, they laid off. They laid off a lot of people in these mines, and that the economy wasn't good at all.
That was the biggest loss to this area, is to lose the industrial lake.
But Sandlot ball and what it meant for the people of the coal fields were not forgotten.
Baseball gave us recognition more than anything. In fact, the town of Benswick would have never been heard of, I think, if it wasn't for baseball.
I think through baseball, we were really accepted. They say, well, there's Stan Brea. Remember, he's a good pitcher. He can play ball for us or this, and people are going after you to play ball for them. And I say, to me, that's acceptance. They wanted me.
I remember Roy Campanello saying one time he'd play the game for nothing as long as they gave him something to eat. So that was the attitude around here.
This simple way of life when hardworking people created their own entertainment, is now largely gone. But the baseball diamonds remain, and the bony-piled discards of the coal mines still loom in the background, reminders of the end of the industrial era in the coal fields of southwestern Pennsylvania. The veterans of these ball fields still gather to reminisce about working in the mines, living in company towns, and those glorious days when working people from different backgrounds forged their own sense of community, playing ball in the industrial leagues.
I remember playing ball, using a broomstick for a bat. Imagine that. The pickup games that I recall, we'd knock the cover off that ball and mend it up with old black tape. Then one day my pa, you see, got me a job down in the mine, just marking time. No more silly games for me, way down beneath the ground I'll be swinging an old pick and not a bat. I'm no Babe Ruth, you see, only in my fantasy. Now there's only coal dust on my walking alone, I find myself in yesterday. So many years, so many tears. Oh, how our gang would play beneath the old street lamps. We'd stay and hit that ball till Mama called. Working all month for not much pay, just seems like I'm working my whole life away, day after day. I place my pick back on the rack and brush the coal dust off my back. I'm rounding third and heading for home. I'm no Babe Ruth, you see, only in my fantasy. Now there's only coal dust on my glove. Every morning my mama wakes me, coffee brewing and pancakes on the stove. Hurry down the road. In my dreams the umpire's calling, box seats the crowds are hollering, just to see me at bat. Every day the whistle blows and you pray to God you'll be coming back. That's a fact. And again my mind still wanders to the fields where I would saunter, a leather glove and my old ball bat. I'm no Babe Ruth, you see, only in my fantasy. Now there's only coal dust on my glove. Then one day I looked to see a sign about a mining baseball team. It's like a dream. I wiped the coal dust off my glove. It's time to play the game I love. The boys of summer will take the field again. I'm no Babe Ruth, you see, only in my fantasy. Now there's only coal dust on my glove. I remember playing ball, using a broomstick for a bat.